All right. So, so painting is the practice of applying paint, pigment, color, or other medium to a solid surface. The medium is commonly applied to the base with a brush, but other implements such as knives, sponges, and airbrushes can be used. So the final work is also called painting. Painting is an important form in the visual arts, bringing in elements such as drawing, gesture, composition, narration, or abstraction. Paintings can be naturalistic and representational, photographic, abstract, narrative, symbolic, emotive, or political in nature. In art, the term painting describes both the act and the result of the action. The support for paintings includes such as surfaces as walls, paper, canvas, wood, glass, lacquer, pottery, leaf, copper, and concrete, and the painting may incorporate multiple other materials, including sand, clay, paper, plaster, gold leaf, as well as objects. So today we are going to see 4 types of painting. First one is fresco. Second one is tempera. And the third one is oil. And the last one is acrylic. So let's see one by one. So fresco, the first one, fresco painting. So it's above all a wall painting technique, and it has been used for large-scale murals since ancient times. So with the fresco, pigments are mixed with water and applied to a plaster support, usually a wall or ceiling coated in plaster. So true fresco is paint made simply of pigment and water applied to wet lime plaster. So as the plaster dries, the lime undergoes a chemical transformation and acts as a binder, fusing the pigment with the plaster surface. The process is very complicated and it takes us a long time to finish one piece of work. But once the painting placed in a wall, it lasts almost forever. So that's why we can see 5 or 6 years old fresco paintings today. And they are almost the same as the original. So we're gonna see how to make a fresco painting together. So let me share a video.
Of a fresco to grasp the materials and the executive technique. Fresco technique is based on the chemistry of the minerals elements, in particular lime, which develops adhesive forces only on materials of the same nature, minerals in fact. The terracotta brick wall is properly brushed and washed in order to receive a first layer of very rough mortar made up of 1 part of lime and 3 of coarse sand, or other inert particles of large granulometry. This layer is well beaten with a float and left very rough because it must ensure the grip of the next layers to the masonry and therefore the stability of the entire work. On this first coarse layer called rough cast, we spread another one, arriccio, sand finished, still rough, repeating the same previous operation. It will be on this layer that the painter will sketch his preparatory drawing, the synopia. Until the middle of 15th centuries, Italian fresco painters frequently paint the outlines for the main forms in their composition on arriccio, the sand finish, before applying the new intonaco section. Most pigments employed for these compositional guides had a red earthy color called sinopia. Sinopia was the name after the city it came from. Eventually, it became the name of this kind of underdrawing. Until the Renaissance, preliminary design were merely sketched on the wall. Later, a new method became common. Design were traced by pouncing.
So he's making the holes, holes line to trace the sketch on the wall like this.
The great attention to the selection of the ingredients, lime, sand, pigments, the preparation of the mortar occurred in the previous days, and the ability to spread the plaster were and are decisive elements such as painting itself. After having wet the wall to saturation, this last layer of mortar is laid on and painted before it is hardened, guaranteeing the properties of brightness and resistance typical of fresco. In particular, be careful not to leave air bubbles and maintain a constant flatness during work using wooden slats or wood float. Actually, since the end of 14th century, this last layer, composed of lime and sand, called intonaco, begins to be saturated with a further thin layer of mortar composed of lime and marble powder in equal proportion, called intonacino or velo. These guarantee a greater smoothness and brightness of the bottom, thanks to the properties of calcium carbonate. At this point, according with the Giotto's technique, described in details by Cennino Cennini in his book of the art, written at the end of 14th century, when the plaster begin to pool, that is when no trace is visible at a slight pressure with the finger, it is possible to apply the pigments mixed only to pure water. In the Renaissance, this national sketch of the figures was helped and speed up with the transfer of the drawing through the cartoon, i.e. drawings prepared on paper. The most widely used method for tracing the design was the spolvero technique, pouncing, obtained by passing a colored powder pad through the holes previously created on paper. When remove the paper from the wall, you just connect the dots with a sharp brush and start painting.
Yeah. So that was fresco painting work process. Let's go back to the slides. So everyone looks familiar with this painting, right? So this is one of the Renaissance master Raphael's painting, the School of Athens, and it is a fresco large wall painting in Vatican. So let's see the creation year. So it's 1510 to 11. So since it is a fresco painting, we can still see this 500 years old painting today. In this fresco painting, nearly every great Greek philosopher is presented, including the two main subject, Plato and his student Aristotle, located at the fresco's central vanishing point with the one-point linear perspective, implied space technique, right? All right, now let's move on to the next painting style, tempera. So tempera is an aqueous medium like watercolor that dries to a tough insoluble film. Its colors retain their brilliance and clarity for centuries. Technically, tempera is paint in which the vehicle is an emulsion, so which is a stable mixture of an aqueous liquid with an oil, fat, wax, or resin. However, the most famous tempera's vehicle is egg yolk. So let me show you how the artist used the egg yolk for the tempera painting.
Renaissance, egg tempera was the principal way of making an image if you were painting on a panel. It's the most archival painting medium. It lasts longer than watercolors, oil paints, anything. All you need is egg yolk, water, and powdered pigment. All paint starts with raw powdered pigment. Then a binder basically is a substance with adhesive properties that holds the paint together. And then when it's applied to a surface, the binder then dries and holds the paint on the surface of whatever it is, a panel or canvas or whatever it is that you're painting. The egg white, we don't use an egg yolk tempera. And then what I want to get into my jar is just the egg yolk. Feel like Julia Child there. Paul Cadmus, he said at this point it's a fairly viscous, it's the pure egg yolk. He said he would mix in enough water so that it had the consistency of half and half. Give it a good shake. Yeah, and that's about right. And that is it. That is the binder for egg tempera. When you mix the egg yolk binder in with the powdered pigment and mix it up, you've got your egg tempera. So this is the way I do it. I will bring a little bit of the dried pigment and I just dip my palette knife, get a little bit of egg yolk, and that's tempera. Easy as that. Egg tempera goes on in thin strokes. It dries very quickly, within seconds. So you cannot mess around and model and blend the egg tempera. All has to be, it's all hatch marks, one on top of the other.
As like he said, the tempera dries quickly, and so colors cannot be blended easily once they sit down. The artist, has to finish their work, quickly. And the egg yolk plays a role like a glue to stick the pigment on the artwork surface in a traditional way.
If you look carefully at it, you'll see all these stroke, 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 stroke. Each individual, they're not any kind of illusion of soft transitions are because it's very carefully regulated, and by building up these multiple very thin strokes one on top of the other. With egg temperas, you can see this is very flat. It's a very fluid medium. If you tried to add a glob of egg tempera, it would dry and crack off. It would flake off. Everything has to be built in very delicate layers, and that's what gives George Tooker's paintings that almost opalescent, satiny quality. Because when you're looking at the surface of a tempera painting, and he's doing it very much in the classic Quattrocento style that he was taught, you're kind of staring through several layers until you're kind of staring into the paint surface. And to a certain extent, the white of the board underneath maybe 12 layers of paint is reflecting out through it. So it has this almost gauzy-like opalescence, which I think adds a certain almost surreal quality to whatever it is that you're painting, which appeals to me.
All right. So that was tempera. So traditionally, tempera was sewed on a wood panel support prepared with a ground up gesso, a mixture of white pigment and glue that sealed the wood and could be sanded and rubbed to a smooth ivory-like finish. Now let's move on the third painting medium, oil. Um, so oil paint consists of pigment compounded with oil. So that's why it's called oil painting. Historically, the most commonly used oils have been linseed oil, poppy seed oil, and walnut oil. And today, commercial manufacturers of artist colors often grind darker pigment with linseed oil and light pigments such as white and yellow with poppy seed oil or sunflower oil, which do not yellow over time, as linseed oil tends to do. Um, what all these oils have in common um, is that they will dry at room temperature, leaving the pigment particles suspended in a um, transparent film. So this is Johannes Vermeer's oil painting Girl with a Pearl earring in 1665. And Johannes Vermeer was a Dutch Baroque period painter who specialized in domestic interior senses of middle-class life. During his lifetime, he was a moderately successful provincial genre painter, and he used the oil painting with this kind of process. So this is a video how to make oil paint in a traditional way. It's just same as the tempera painting. So for the tempera painting, the artist used egg yolk, right? For the oil painting, they just use the oil instead of the egg yolk with the color pigment. So please watch this video. It's in the model room um, after this meeting. And the traditional oil paints are made like this by mixing pigment and oil together with the heavy and even bottom tool like this, cone she's holding. So many masters of painting in art history love to use oil for their painting because it dries slow, so artists can easily revise their painting and available blend colors on the work surface. That's the huge differences, with the tempera. Tempera's vehicle is egg yolk and it dries so quickly, but the oil painting is not. Um, so let's just compare oil with the tempera in terms of vehicle. So oil painting and the tempera painting looks like almost the same. The result is almost same, and they use the same color pigment powder again, and they can also paint on wood, canvas, or diverse surfaces. Um, However, oil is much cheaper than egg yolk of tempera's vehicle, and the oil is easy to get, compared to the other vehicle. Also, oil paint dries slowly again, so easy to blend on the work surfaces. That's the huge advantages. So that's why many painters prefer to use oil vehicle for their painting. Now let's move on to the last painting medium, acrylic painting. So everyone, have you ever used acrylic paint before? Yeah. So what was the vehicle? So how to use it? How to use the acrylic?
I used it like regular paint, just like the oil paint. Well, just put it on a palette of something and then just use it regular. I don't know if that's the right
So
The right explanation. Sorry.
it's all right. So the vehicle is just the water, right? Yeah, when you use the acrylic paint, you just use the water to blend the colors, apply the colors on your, the work surface, right? So
Sorry, I'm not awake yet.
it's all right. It's early in the morning. I do understand. So it's very convenient to use, right? So the enormous developments in chemistry during the early 20th century had an impact in artist studio as well. By the 1930s, chemists had learned to make a strong and weatherproof industrial paint using a vehicle of synthetic plastic resins. These new synthetic artist colors are broadly known as acrylics. The vehicle consists of acrylic resin polymerized through emulsion in water. So as acrylic paint dries, the resin particles colorless to form to tough, flexible, and waterproof film. So this is the huge advantage for the acrylic paint. Acrylic can mimic the effects of oil paint and watercolor by concentration of water. So let me show you the example. So like this. So many contemporary artists use acrylic because it doesn't need a special vehicle to use. It can just, make oil paint and watercolor effect by water's concentration. So when you use a small amount of water, then you can make oil paint effect. No, I'm sorry, um, no, that's right. The watercolor, if I'm sorry, the oil um, paint effects, just like the, this emphasis part, right? And the if you add enough water in the acrylic paint, then you can use it like the watercolor paint on the subordination of this painting. So like this painting, the artist shows oil paint effects on the emphasis part and the watercolor effect on the subordination part by using acrylic paint. So that's it for the painting. We're gonna take a break for 5 minutes since the printmaking chapter is very complicated and there are lots of techniques we talk about. So let's take a break for 5 minutes. All right, everyone. Please come back. So let's see. Before we see the next chapter, the printmaking, let me share the first discussion related to the printing chapter. So this is the first topic today. Now, is drawing or painting a learned, skilled, or a natural talent? Please now reply to this discussion topic by Monday, and then please reply to your peers by Tuesday. That's the first discussion topic. All right, so let's see printmaking. So printing is a process for reproducing text and images using a master form or template. There are 5 big printing techniques: relief, intaglio, lithography, screen printing, and digital inkjet. So we are going to skip the last one. Now, digital inkjet, probably everyone knows what it is. So now let's see one by one. So the first printing technique, relief. So relief print make the print plates raise the area, the top parts, hold the ink. So all the printing technique like this called like relief. So let's see. More detailed process of the relief printing. So this is the process of relief printing. Number 1, an image is designed and is prepared for transfer to the block surface. And the image is now transferred to the block. And the surface area that will not be printed is curved away like this. And number 4, the remaining protruding surface is carefully inked. And the last one, the raised inked area is transferred to the surface to be printed. So there are 3 popular ways of relief printing. Woodcut. So woodcut is that an artist curved an image into the surface of a block of wood, typically with gauzes. And the next one is wood engraving is one of the popular way of relief printing. So wood engraving is a printmaking and the letterpress printing technique in which an artist works an image or matrix of images into a block of wood. And the last one is lino cut. Lino cut is also called linoleum cut because the block's name is linoleum. So for the lino cut, artists use linoleum instead of wood. So it is very similar to woodcut. However, it is much softer than wood, and the relative softness makes linoleum easier to cut. So let's see each examples. So this is woodcut relief printing. So as you can see, the image area and the image outline were curved away, and the rest of area is printed with ink. That's woodcut relief printing. And this is wood engraving. So it's just, reverse way of woodcut. So except for the image outline, all the rest parts are curved away. So the outlines are printed by ink. And this is lino cut. Lino cut can do the same ways with the woodcut or wood engraving. It's just using a different block, which is softer and easier to cut, the code like linoleum. So let me show you a video how to make the relief printing. Give me 1 second. Okay.
I make relief prints. Pretty much everything's based on drawings, little notebook doodles that get evolved into a draft. So there's a ton of redrawing. Spend a lot of time with the same image, constantly refine, until I basically know every mark that I'm going to make, and then to make it into a print. 3 disciplines, basically: drawing, the actual cutting of the drawing into a template matrix, a material that I carve into, like Sintra, woodblock, whatever that will be, and then printing that. This is MDF, so there's no grain, and this is a drawing that I have transferred to the MDF. And these are the tools that I use.
So what is the technique? We just saw woodcut, wood engraving, and lino cut. So lino cut is not the answer because he just used, wood block, called like MDF block.
Woodcut, right?
I'm
That one?
sorry, it's wood engraving.
That's what. See, I'm sorry. I'm
It's all
not
right.
good this morning. I'm gonna stop
It's all
answering.
right. So the outline is going to be printed, and all the background parts are curved away. So it is wood engraving.
That I use old textile tools. So I got U-gouges, a different assortment of sizes, V-gouge, and then I would tone the block with an acrylic so I can see my mark, what I've done here with the graphite. Because if I was just to make a mark in the wood without toning it, you can't really see what you're doing. Lay some color down, boom, it really pops out. After I've gotten all of my detail outline work out of the way, then I will go in with a bigger U-gouge, carve around the whole piece so you get bigger, much larger marks. A couple of those next to each other, and then just keep hacking away. This was once 3/4 inch, and now it's at some points down to like not even a half an inch. So I've gone and just chiseled out all that. Makes it look really clean. It confuses people. Is that a woodcut or is that a screen print? So that's what I like to go for. There we go. The first part of printing is getting a nice ink palette going. This is a Japanese ink. Basically, what you're looking for is a nice velvet kind of sheen. You don't want to put too much ink. You want that porridge just perfect. This is just caveman registration right here, just so I know where to put the paper and where to put the actual little block. I like to wet the paper, get really nice rich blacks, details, line it up with my registration, block down, ensure no movement of the paper. So we'll roll it through the 15th century copying machine, no electricity needed. Pretty awesome.
Yep, pretty awesome. So that is a relief printing technique. So now let's move on to the intaglio printing technique. Intaglio print make the print plates incised area hold the ink. So can you see this? You know, this is the side view of the plate, and this incised area, the drawing lines hold the ink, not the outside of the plate. So let's see how it works. So the here is the process of intaglio printing. So number one, an image is designed for a plate. And for the intaglio printing, um, most of the printmakers use the metal plate. And number two, using a sharp tool, the artist incises the image on the plate. Mostly, the plate is metal. And number three, the plate is inked. And look at this. Number four, the surface of the plate is wiped in removing all ink except in the grooves, the incised area, the drawing lines hold the ink only. The surface, now the ink on the surface is removed. And number five, paper is placed on the plate and it is pressed. And number six, the paper lifts the ink out of the grooves and the ink is imprinted on the paper. Number seven, the final image is completed. So intaglio is exactly the reverse of the relief, in that the areas meant to print are below the surface of the printing plate, and the artist uses a sharp tool or acid to make depressions like lines, grooves, or pits in a metal plate. So when the plate is inked, the ink sinks into the depressions, then the surface of the plate is wiped clean. When damped paper is brought into contact with the plate under pressure, the paper is pushed into the depression to pick up the image. So there are diverse types of intaglio, but we are going to see only three intaglio printing technique today. First, dry point. Second, etching. Third one is aquatint. So intaglio is kind of hard to understand. So we are going to watch videos for each types of intaglio together. And also all the videos are in the Moodle room. So you must watch them for your understanding. So let's see each of them. The dry point for the first intaglio technique. So dry point is similar to engraving, except that the cutting instrument used is a dry point needle like this, the sharp tool. So the artist draws on the plate, usually a copper plate, and almost as freely as one can draw on paper with a pencil. As the needle scratches across the plate, it raises a burr or thin ridge of metal. So if left in place, the burr will hold ink along with the incised line, producing a soft, slightly blurred line when printed. So let me share a video to see the dry point intaglio printing work process.
Dry point is a printmaking process in which an image is incised by hand onto a printing plate. Once the image is made, it is inked and printed with a press. The dry point line creates a burr which catches the ink.
So she's using a needle, oh, a needle to draw something on the plate, but she's using acrylic plate now. Oops.
I'm using an Akua printmaking plastic plate. It's very soft and easy to incite.
It is like a needle roller to make scratches on the plate.
And press into. This is a line roulette dry point tool. It leaves an impression of a series of short lines. Rich darks are created by overlapping and cross-hatching. This roulette has a random dot pattern, which creates tonal values and textural effects. Needle tip dry point tools offer fine lines on top of the roulette marks or on top of the smooth surface of the plate. The image is finished and ready to be inked up for printing. I'm going to use Akua Intaglio soy-based ink right from the jar. Akua Intaglio ink is perfect for printing a dry point plate. The ink is applied gently with a piece of matte board. Once the plate is completely covered with a thin layer of ink, Akua wiping fabric is used to wipe away excess ink. An inky piece of wiping fabric rolled into a ball is used first. Akua wiping fabric is recommended because it is softer than tarlatan, yet more absorbent than cheesecloth. Akua Intaglio ink will not skin or harden on the wiping fabric. To remove more plate tone and create a higher contrast print, I will continue to wipe the plate with a clean piece of wiping fabric.
So isn't it amazing? The scratches line hold the ink.
Once the desired amount of ink is removed, the plate is run through an etching press along with a piece of dampened paper. When printing with the Akua Intaglio ink, it is very important that the paper is just slightly damp. If the paper is too wet, the print will dry hazy. An hour ago, I sprayed the paper, then placed it in a plastic bag. Blotting before printing will ensure that the paper is not too wet. For easy registration, I prepared a template and placed it on the press bed. As the plate goes through the press, the ink is being transferred from the plate to the paper. The high pigment load in Akua Intaglio Mars Black highlights the velvety appearance of the dry point line.
Looks cool, right? So this is a dry point print work. Now looks like a pencil drawing, right? Yep, like this. Looks like a pencil drawing. So that is dry point intaglio printing technique. Now let's move on to the etching intaglio printing technique. Etching is done with acid that eats lines and depressions into a metal plate, much as sharp tool cut those depressions in the method. So the process is here. The artist coats the entire plates with an acid resistant substance called a ground like this on the top of the plate. And the artist draws on the coated plate with an etching needle, just the same needle with the dry point. And then the needle removes the ground, exposing the bare metal in the area meant to print. And the entire plate is dipped in acid, only the portion of the plate intact. And the ground is removed the plate is inked and printed. So let me share a video to see the etching integral printing work process.
Welcome back to another video tutorial brought to you by thevirtualinstructor.com. Today we're going to look at the process of etching. We're looking at prints by Rembrandt. These are all etchings. Now etching is a form of printmaking called intaglio, and that includes etching and engraving. The first thing you need to do is gather the supplies that you're going to need to ground your plate. You'll need a brush, you'll need etching ground, and of course you'll need a plate. The next thing you'll need to do is use the brush to apply the ground to the plate. You may choose to dab the brush because you don't want brush strokes, you just want a smooth surface. Then allow the ground to dry on the plate. Allow ample time for this to happen. It may be several hours. Overnight is a good idea. Next, you'll begin to scratch off the areas that you want to be black. You may achieve this by scratching in a crosshatch pattern or perhaps using squiggly lines. You can use any sharp tool to accomplish this. In this case, I prepared my plate using a leather punch. Here's a look at the completed plate for this etching. Now you'll need to gather your supplies for the acid part of this process. You'll need acid, gloves, eye protection, and an etched plate. In this case, I'm using copper etches. Pour the acid into a container and drop the etched plate into the acid bath. You'll now allow the acid bath to bite into the plate. Everywhere where there is not ground, the acid will bite into the plate. Brush away the bubbles during this process. This process may take anywhere from several seconds to several minutes, depending on the ground from the plate.
So after, acid bath process, then, he's just removing the ground.
Either acetone or some other paint thinner. Now gather your ink supplies. This will include oil-based printing ink and some type of card to the plate.
And now it's just, same process with the dry point. Apply the ink.
Next, spread the ink around with the card. Be sure to force the ink into the grooves of the plate. The ink from the surface of the plate. Here's what your prepared plate should look like.
So remove all the, inks on the surface of the plate, and then the group lines only hold the ink.
Now lay the prepared plate onto the press.
And the same process.
Top of the plate, inside of the,
and then
from one side each other.
Print it like this. So this is an etching printing work. So looks like a pen drawing with the modeling mess, right? So compared to the dry point printing, looks darker and deeper, right? Because the drawing lines are depressed by acid. So that is the huge difference with the dry point. Now let's move on to the third integral technique, aquatint. So aquatint is a way of achieving flat of tone gray values or intermediate values of color. So it doesn't need a needle to draw something on the plate. That's the biggest difference with the previous two integral technique we just saw. So the artist first does it with finely powdered resin on the top of the plate. And the plate is heated so that the resin sticks to it. And the resin registers acid. So this resin works just like the the ground for the etching integral printing. So so when the plate is immersed in acid, the acid will bite all around the resin particles, producing a pitted surface that holds ink evenly. And the artist block non-printing area with the ground and the brush and dip the entire plate into an acid bath. So the ground is removed and the plate is ready to inked and printed. So let me, share a video for your understanding. It's really hard to understand, to see just the process in the slide. So I'm just sharing a video. So he's applying the resin and dry it to stick to it on the plate and heat it. And using the ground, he's blocking the plate where he doesn't want to, make a depression on the plate. So see, he doesn't using he doesn't use any etching needle. He's just using a brush to covering the area that he doesn't want to print. So the open area is making a depression a little bit. And he's covering some parts to make the modeling effects on it. Like, some part is darker and some part is lighter, controlling the, the opened space on the plate. Now he's removing all the ground and then it looks like this. That's cool. And he's making the edge softer because if the place edge is too sharp, then it can cut the paper when it's printed. So let's see. Making the paper a little bit damp and then applying the ink on the plate and he's printing now. So it looks like this. All right, so that is aqua tint intaglio printing technique. So it looks like this. So can you see the difference now from the previous two intaglio techniques? So there is no scratched line on it compared to the previous two intaglio technique. There is no line on it. So that's the huge differences. And there are all flattened value modeling because it doesn't use a needle. That's very important. And now let's move on to the third printing technique, lithography. So lithography is totally different technique with relief and intaglio we just saw together. So the image area on the lithography plate hold the ink, and the non-image area repel the ink. Can you imagine it? So there is no curving, needle drawing, or acid depression. So let's see the work process. So the artist designs the image to be printed. And number two, this is a greasy pencil. So using this grease pencil, the design is drawn onto the limestone. So this is a stone. And blocking the pores with the grease pencil. And step three, the stone is treated with acid and not for the depression and the other chemicals that are brushed onto its surface. And then the surface is wiped clean with the solvent such as kerosene. And number four, the stone is sponged so that water can be absorbed into the pores of the stone. And number five, the oil-based ink is repelled by the water and sits only on areas where the oil crayon image was drawn, like this. And step six, paper is laid on the surface of the stone and it is drawn through a press, and the print is removed from the stone. The complete image appears in reverse compared with the original design. So let me show you the lithography video for your understanding.
My name is Laura, and I'm in my second year of MA Printmaking here at Camberwell College of Arts. I'm going to show you lithography, which is a process that I'm mostly used.
So she's using grease. No, this drawing for that, no, this pencil is grease pencil. She just draw on the stone.
Before coming here, I was not using Printmaking.
This one.
I mostly draw on paint, so lithography feels quite close to the feeling to painting or drawing directly on paper. I like it because it's quite painterly, and yeah, it's very close to my sensitivity. The feeling is close to do it, but actually in the print process, there are many accidents, and I'm very quick normally on the drawings, but with the printmaking, I need to be more thinking of what I'm doing. It is going to be reproduced many times, whether with the drawing or painting, everything is happening there. Taking a drawing on like a stone or a plate, it feels a little bit more precious. You know, you plan and you put layers on it, so there is a bit more planning. You have a little bit more pressure on you. You need to constantly think about that the image is going to be mirrored. But even when you're drawing, actually, it's like on a piece of paper, I normally start from the left. But then sometimes when I print, I say, oh, okay, that obviously looks different because the figure that it meant to be on the left is on the right.
See, only the drawing part hold the ink, and the rest of the part repels the ink.
It's quite demanding. I enjoy that part, maybe because I enjoy materials. In my BA, I did sculpture, and I'm quite, linked into materials, and I quite enjoy the physical labor of printmaking.
All right, so that is lithography. So, lithography is a planographic process, which means that the printing surface is totally flat, and it is not raised as in relief or depressed as in intaglio. To make a lithographic print, the artist draws the image on the stone with greasy material. So when the stone is inked, the greasy ink sticks to the greasy drawing. Now let's see the last printing technique, screen printing. Screen printing is called silk screen or serigraphy. There is a screen here. This is called like a screen for the screen printing, and the ink passes through the area of the screen that are not blocked, and the gray part is blocked with the special substance. Mostly, no, image area, is not blocked. So traditionally, this printing technique is used for T-shirt printing. Screen printing is a printing technique where a mesh is used to transfer ink onto a substrate, except in areas made impermeable to the ink by a blocking stencil. The screen is a fine mesh of silk or synthetic fiber mounted in a frame rather like window screen. And working from drawings, the printmaker blocks the screen area that are not meant to print by plugging the holes so that no ink can pass through this part. And then the screen is placed over paper and the ink is forced through the mesh with the tool called squeezy. And only the areas not stopped out allow the ink to pass through on paper. So also, I'm going to share a video to make a screen printing process.
I like to make stuff. Today, I'm going to show you how to screen print your own t-shirts. To the little bottle of stuff comes in two parts. You're going to add a little water to the little bottle of sensitizer and mix it up. That loosens it from the sides of the bottle, and then you can pour it into the emulsion. Then you're going to mix that all together really, really well until it's a consistent green color. It might take a little while, but you want to make sure that you get it fully consistent. Once you have it, you pour a little bit of it onto the screen. You don't need to use very much because it spreads really thin once you use a squeegee. Make sure to get the entire...
So this screen Now, the green thing is a special material which is very sensitive for the light.
Everything covered where your art's going to be and make sure it's really, really even. But don't leave this out in the light. Put a fan on it to dry and turn the lights off. You want it to dry in the dark. Once it's dry.
So if this green part is exposed by the light, then all the pores are blocked. So the artist cannot make the image here.
Out in the light. Put a fan on it to dry and turn the lights off. You want it to dry in the dark. Once it's dry, you do want to work quickly because this stuff is photosensitive. So the longer the light's on it, the quicker it's going to set. Print out your art on some transparencies. You can do this at any.
So this black part is not exposed by the light, which means this part is not blocked.
The supply store, and then lay them backward on the back of the screen. Lay a piece of glass over them to push them down against the screen, and then set a really bright light on top of it for about 30 or 45 minutes.
So now by the lighting, now he just make the green part, the background part is blocking.
So while we're waiting on that, I want to tell you.
Okay, he's just talking about not relative information
that is not covered by the design. So you can see the lighter green stuff here didn't get exposed. You can use a light spray and a soft toothbrush to help remove this area.
Only the background part is blocked, and the image area, the black printed part is not blocked because it's not exposed by the light.
The way printing works is that the green area acts as a mask. The white or lighter area lets the ink through onto the surface that you're printing on. You want to do this gently because you don't want to remove anything that you actually need. This may take a little bit of time, and sometimes you may have mistakes. If you have areas that are mistakes or stuff you don't want to print yet, you can use some tape to cover them up. Use painter's tape and not duct tape. The duct tape will rip off the emulsion. Now lay out your shirt and place your screen, then add a nice thick bead of the screen printing ink. It's best to have somebody else hold your screen and then pull the squeegee down across your print. If you click here, you can see one of my first videos on this channel was how to make a 4-color printing about the same results.
So looks like this. So that is screen printing. So this is a screen printing work. Looks like a solid acrylic painting, right? For screen printing, artists use one screen frame for each color. So for example, for this work, the artist used one frame is for ivory color, and one is for light gray, and one is for medium gray here, and one is for the dark gray here, and one is for navy color, and one is for the light red, and the other one is for the dark red. And I can see the background is great gradation, but it can be just a mixed one frame. So he just used 8 screen frames for this work, which is a lot. It looks like a great work of art with the excellent technique. Okay, so that's it for this chapter. So printing is kind of tricky to understand without visually watching how to do it. So please review all the techniques again. And we have a discussion related to this chapter. So please go to week 5-2. And this is the topic today related to the printing chapter. So watch the printmaking process video below. We just watch them together and choose one of the traditional printing technique and tell us the brief printing features and process. We just learn together. So this discussion is just going to be the review activity. So please watch these videos again And please choose one of them and state the work process. That's all. Any question?